question from the chat room.
Yes.
Have you read Merlin Stone's book, When God Was a Woman?
Oh, absolutely. That was my second favorite book. My second favorite. I always quote the two nonfiction books that I liked the best and set me on the path were Rihanna Eisler's Chalice and the Blade and Merlin Stone's When God Was a Woman. And she passed away just this year. And a lot of us are, Z Budapest and some other people are putting together a tribute to Merlin Stone. But my favorite fiction book, though, was The Mists of Avalon, Marion Zimmer Bradley. You see the Arthurian legends from a female perspective. That was a lot of fun, too.
I bet.
Yeah.
I didn't read it, but I remember when it came out. So then, as we progress, because I agree with you that I think that on the one hand, feminism kind of got this hard knock because of the radical feminists who were very anti-male and very pissed off, although they had every right to be. That what happens now is that other brands of feminism or other ways of being a feminist kind of get ignored or pushed aside because they're not radical, or get lumped into that radical umbrella when they're not really.
Well, I honestly don't know any radical feminists. I know women who are out there trying to make the world a better place. Women who are out there working for animal rights, working for human rights, working for women's rights. They're not radical. They just want a fair society. They want a caring culture. But somehow...
That's right.
Apparently that's radical. In
radical.
a patriarchal society, that upsets the balance of power. That's really what it boils down to. It upsets the balance of power. And suddenly that means, again, I really don't mean to male bash here, but it means men have to share power. I mean, there's only 17% of women in upper academia, in upper corporate management, in religious authority, 17%. And we're more than 50% of the population. We are not, women are not, their voices are not out there making the decisions about what's happening in the world. And
especially when you see who some of that 17% is.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Not all that 17% is really speaking for all women.
No, we call
equally.
we call some of those women handmaidens of the patriarchy. I think we're probably talking about some of the same
the same people, I'm sure.
And I don't even think they would really know what feminism is. They just support the status quo. They support oil companies. They support, the religious right that oppresses women, and they really are complicit in the oppression of their own gender. And I don't know if they don't know it or if they think they have something to be gained by it. Can't get in their head, but it's not in the genitals. It's really not in the genitals, because obviously some women are, shall I say, enemies of a caring culture, enemies of women's equality. They're not out there fighting for it, they're fighting against it. I mean, look at what's going on right now with women's, rights to reproduction.
Absolutely.
Isn't it incredible to think?
We shouldn't still be arguing.
No, we shouldn't. Because we're not just still arguing abortion. We're getting to the point where we're arguing contraception.
Yeah.
Like planning parenthood is a bad thing.
Right.
It's just insane, because if these people are supposed to be worried about women having abortion, well, they're putting them in a position where, unless they practice abstinence, which isn't going to happen.
Well, and the men aren't going to.
Yeah.
So.
So I mean,
I'm not sure how the women are supposed to practice abstinence when the men aren't.
Well, there's not a lot of thinking going on. I don't think it's just this rhetoric without a lot of thought behind it. It seems.
Absolutely.
I like with my college, we give women the contraception and the condoms and birth control either for free or for really cheap.
Mm-hmm.
and our school doesn't practice abstinence only, and gives everyone the education that everyone needs. So it's actually pretty equal at my school. It's weird to have that, because I'm from here, which is not very equal, and going to Maine, it somehow got more equal with men and women in the positions that they have at school and in just the students themselves.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that your area of New England that you're in is actually more progressive than Los Angeles.
Well, they're both blue states. So
Yeah.
we're still talking about blue state areas, so we're still kind of safe.
Yeah. But you're right. I think so. Where do you think the divine feminine or the sacred feminine can? Where do you think that can fit in order to work towards women's rights, women's reproductive rights?
Well, I believe that if there were a chance we could have a secular society and take religion out of it, that would be ideal. But if we're not going to take religion out of it, let's go ahead and put in theology. Not just male-dominated religion, but these ideas of the sacred feminine that can complement or offset this, only the patriarchal agenda that's always in the news and it seems to be taking over government. So if you add into the mix ideals of the sacred feminine alongside the divine masculine, because this isn't about getting rid of God. This is about, seeing God and Goddess in their rocking chair, together arm in arm, scratching their heads saying, why did our children ever divorce us? We never intended to be divorced. But so if you take, both ideals and put them together, you have more balance. So if we add in the ideas of the sacred feminine, well, you have healthy sexuality. You don't have all of this, this abnormal, crazy sexual taboos, that fill people with shame and, create, so much angst and sorrow, and, women, can't even feel good about their sexuality. I mean, they're life givers, for heaven's sake. And, we have big pharma out there telling women, oh, just take a pill, get rid of it, but with the sacred feminine, for instance, with that, we talk about, what is your sacred blood? That's part of the life force. It's part of what makes you a woman. We think about what it might have been like in ancient times when women, like in ancient Greece, for instance, they were like some of the primary pharmacologists. I'm sure they had a pretty good handle on their menses and women's reproduction. I mean, they held life and death in their hands. So the idea that women and men could, just from a sexual standpoint, have a better relationship with their sexuality. Women could have a better relationship with their menses. You wouldn't have, this stuff where there's so much, taboos. I mean, today on the planet, women are still relegated to the menstrual hut. Some people still think that, a woman who's menstruating, it's something to be feared. It's unbelievable, quite frankly. This isn't just Dark Ages stuff. There wouldn't maybe be female genital mutilation if women were seen as divine and their bodies weren't seen as, taboo or somehow unclean. I don't know. Our framework, our conditioning would start to change and be different. We think that maybe there wouldn't be so much abnormal pornography, human trafficking. We have infanticide that goes on in other countries where, girl babies are killed because down the road, well, they may cost their family an expensive dowry. You have, women covering their bodies in burqas because men can't control their libido. So there's the sexual aspect, but there's also the political aspect, the social aspect. I think if men and women looked at women as equals, they couldn't get away with unequal pay. They couldn't get away with the injustice that happens, and women's ideas about how things should be would start to be in the boardroom and start to be in academia and start to be in religions. It wouldn't all just be everything from a patriarchal, dominator culture. Predator capitalism is one thing. I don't think if, there were more women in charge, we would have to deal with. I mean, there's so many different areas, I believe, that ideals of the sacred feminine could tweak. Environmentalism is a big thing. I mean, Mother Earth, for instance, you wouldn't, be cutting down the rainforests, you wouldn't be raping the earth, look, the Republicans were just trying to redefine rape recently. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just insane, and I don't know if, that seems like an extreme word to use, but the direction, the direction we're going in, I think feels really extreme and quite scary, to tell you the truth. Where if we had more of a balance, if the sacred feminine were there alongside the divine masculine ideals, we think it would just be, more of a world with, with balance, justice, equality. Women wouldn't be subjugated, oppressed, and that would just mean a better quality of life for everybody and the planet and all the animals on the planet.
So what do you feel are positive aspects of each of those beings? Positive aspects of both the divine masculine and the divine feminine?
Well, I think that the divine masculine definitely has a role. And, and there are people who say that in this paradigm shift that we're talking about that potentially could be coming, that so many of us are working toward as we talk about a caring culture, the role of the man doesn't have to be a warrior. It would shift more into the role of a protector. We still, love a lot of their qualities, but this idea of this domination would shift more into a protector role. With the sacred feminine, what the sacred feminine brings to it is, the attributes that have been considered feminine, well, instead of being demonized or looked upon as weak, they would be valued as well. Intuition, wisdom, nurturing, love, peace. Again, I've said it already over and over again because it's so important, but equality and justice. If you mix this, if you have partnership, not domination, then everybody is looking for, well, how can we get along? How can we make this work for all of us? Not just, the countries that have the most bullets and bombs or money to oppress, the smaller countries. I mean, it's on so many levels. It's on male versus female. It's country versus country. We have a lot of domination going on in the world, and look where it's brought us to.
And it's not consensual.
Right.
It's not fun kind. It's not consensual. Go ahead.
Something that I learned in my psychology class is that when men get angered or stressed, that they're taught by society to hold everything in because they're not allowed to go get comfort from someone. And scientists are trying to say that women don't do that. They've come up with a system that's sort of a buddy-buddy system. If they get stressed out, they can, be comforted, and this is allowed by society, but isn't allowed for men.
Well, and I think and forgive me, I forgot the university. It might have been Berkeley or UCLA. There was something about how men and women react to stress. Men, it's fight or flight, where women tend to gather together and figure out, well, what are we going to do? And so I would rather have the people who are gathering together and putting their heads together to figure out what we're going to do. I'd rather have their finger on the button than somebody who's got a fight or flight response. But if you put the two together, that's not bad either, because then you have some balance. And you think about what men have really loss too, I think, by not having these ideals of the sacred feminine in society, especially if you're a man who would like to be a nurturing fellow, or, your whole life isn't around, testosterone-driven activities, you would like to be able to be, gentler and kinder without perhaps being teased, in the schoolyard or something. It's almost as if, maybe gender roles would almost even blur, because, women would feel free to follow whatever path is their authentic self calls to them, and men would too, So I think there's that. It would be we wouldn't have to live in these rigid little boxes. I think the sacred feminine introduced to the mix sort of gives us a lot more options and diversity.
Do you think that in our current Western culture, do you think that maybe women have a little bit more freedom to follow a broader path than men do? Because I think to some degree, it's a little bit more accepted for example, for a woman to have masculine attributes, but it's really not acceptable for a man to have feminine attributes.
No, I agree with you there, although I couldn't help but what sort of popped into my head is what happens in, say, corporate America when a woman is assertive? What do they say about her?
Yeah, she's a controlling bitch.
Right, but a guy can get away with it. So
Yeah.
so there's it's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely,
I think it's a double-edged
It's
sword.
sort of the thing of being a slut and being a pimp, where a guy goes out and has sex with a whole bunch of women, he becomes a pimp, he's awesome, he's cool. Girl goes out and has sex with a whole bunch of men, she's a slut, she's a whore,
it's
she's
the double
dirty.
standard. Yeah, it's a double standard. Yeah, that still exists. And I mean, look, take it into the third world. I mean, a woman in a third world country can be stoned to death for being raped because the fact that she was raped brings shame to her family. I mean, we're messed up.
Yeah,
we're really messed up.
No, I agree. I agree
Yeah.
entirely. So how do you see, where do you see your path going? Where do you see what you're trying to do through your radio show, through your books? Where are you trying to take this?
Well, I spent most of my life not knowing about the sacred feminine. And when I discovered the sacred feminine, and in a way, I think, in the Bible Belt, there's a concerted interest to keep it from you. I started out, pretty angry about it, and so at first for me it was about just personal empowerment. And then I thought, you know what, if I didn't learn about this till late in life, there's a lot of other women out there that don't know anything about this too, a lot of men who don't know anything about this. So I felt then, my job, my mission, so to speak, like a lot of other men and women, who have discovered the sacred feminine, they're just trying to raise awareness. They're talking to people about it. They're teaching about it. So, every week on my radio show, I'll have, a man or a woman come on and talk about some aspect of the sacred feminine. I mean, recently I had someone on the show talking about Sarah Palin's church and how they're at war with the Queen of Heaven and what they really do. And, why different branches of Christianity, why there's tension about Mary. I've had people on talking about the mysteries of Eleusis and, of course, the hallucinogens that they used in those ancient rites. So it's a wide spectrum. I mean, there's a lot of different directions you can go in to understand the sacred feminine, past and present. But mostly, I think, what I talk about now is trying to make women and men be aware of herstory. That goddess was worshipped 40,000 years ago, and there's artifacts that will prove that, like the Venus of Willendorf, for instance. So, you just, try to, it's like adult education. You just try to reach as many people that you can and plant the seeds, and then if it feels like it's something that resonates with them, well, then they start to, I think, understand more about how you can take this into society and into culture to make the world a better place. So that we stop, sort of spiraling out of control, and what a new paradigm shift can actually look like, for the planet if we pull back on some of the things that we've been doing that don't work, and maybe start to incorporate some other ideas that bring more balance and wholeness and fairness to most of the people, rather than just a few of the people who have benefited from the structure as it is,
Yeah. We're at 5 minutes? Okay. Do we have questions in the chat room?
No, they're all agreeing with you and happy about it.
Yay! Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
That's
You're not
a
yelling at us.
change.
That's wonderful. So what we'll do then, since we only have a few minutes left on the tape and we're at a good breathing point, is we'll take a quick break and we'll change out the tape, and we're going to log off of our Ustream, but I think we'll still be in the chat room, I think. I don't know how that works exactly. But what this comes down to, we'll be back in a few minutes, and just give us 2 or 3 minutes to do this.